Russian President Vladimir Putin warned that he would drop the START nuclear weapons agreement treaty with the United States if Washington keeps dismantling a global arms control regime. In an exclusive interview, former U.S. Defense Secretary William Perry tells us that the Trump administration is underestimating the danger posed by nuclear arms, which could lead to a full-on war. Our diplomatic correspondent Ellie Hochenberg spoke with him at the International Luxembourg Forum on preventing nuclear catastrophe.
The most dangerous time since the Cold War. This is how former U.S. Secretary of Defense William Perry is describing the current American policy or lack thereof when it comes to arms control. In an exclusive interview with I24 News, Mr. Perry is saying a change in administration might be necessary in order to get to a more responsible policy.
The United States, under Trump and with Bolton as National Security Advisor, has no appetite at all for arms control, and in fact is systematically withdrawing from the major treaties we had. That is a problem. But there's a comparable problem, I think, in Russia with President Putin, and between the two of them, I think it's quite unlikely that we'll have any progress in this field. I suspect that there will have to be a change in administrations in the United States and ultimately a change in administration in Russia before we get a more positive approach.
For Mr. Perry and many other top officials at the International Luxembourg Forum on preventing nuclear catastrophe headed by Dr. Vyacheslav Kantor, the focus is shifting from hostile states threatening the use of nuclear weapons from North Korea to Iran to the role Washington fails to fulfill.
They don't understand that the arms control treaties were designed to lessen the danger to everybody, to ourselves and other countries as well. And therefore they're walking away from treaties. The INF Treaty, I think, was a historical agreement between the United States and then the Soviet Union, now Russia, that eliminated a whole class of weapons and it greatly reduced the dangers that there would be some kind of a war started in Europe. For decades, through Republican administrations and Democratic administrations, whatever their other disagreements may be, they always had an understanding of the danger of nuclear war and the importance of the United States taking a leadership role in reducing those dangers. We don't see that today, so that is a matter of great concern to me.
And this lack of understanding, this deviation from a long-standing bipartisan American policy could lead to a full-on war, not because of the ambition of the other side, says the former U.S. Secretary of Defense, but because of a political miscalculation.
I do not believe that any of the nuclear powers has an intention or a plan of deliberately starting a nuclear war. I think that's certainly true between the United States and Russia. Neither leader, neither administration, neither country has the intention of starting a nuclear war. And I also think that's true of North Korea. In spite of the bombastic and the rhetoric you sometimes hear from the leaders of North Korea, I think that fundamentally they understand that any war would be the ending of their regime, the disaster of the country. They understand that. So the problem is not that any of these nuclear countries are going to deliberately start a nuclear war. The problem is that the relationships are so toxic and the political atmosphere is so poor that there's a possibility of a political miscalculation that could lead to some kind of military conflict which would then escalate into a nuclear war. So the analogy here is not World War II, where a country deliberately had a long-term plan for starting a war and defeating its neighbors. The analogy is World War I, where we blundered into a war that nobody really wanted.
Ellie Hochenberg, I24 News, Rome.